Hello, this is Dennis McDonald with A1 Telephone Service and Repair, A1 Electronics. You can get us on the web at www.a1-telephone.com. This is a customer's telephone, Bernard from New York. And this is one of our repair forms off the internet. And he writes on his repair form, problem is intermittent. We can hear called/calling party, but they cannot hear us. When I blow into the mouthpiece, there is no feedback into the earpiece. I changed the cords, no help. I changed handset, still intermittent. Phone plugged into other working jacks, still the same problem. Name, number, memory, clock, auto, redial, and all that other stuff worked. Continue on the back. It says, sometimes after approximately 10 to 20 seconds, the phone will start to work properly. Sometimes if I disconnect the handset from the phone, he's just basically saying that, it's no matter what he does, it just keeps happening, and the problem is obviously on the inside of the phone. Good luck. Okay, so basically what we need to do, this is an initial checkout of this telephone, and it's a Radio Shack telephone. Looks like a pretty nice phone. It's got all kinds of memory and stuff like that for stored numbers, and it's a speaker phone too. And so what you're going to see here is I have the back of the handset off, and we're going to do some checks here, just some basic checks, and really what we're wanting to do, and it's kind of hard to show you on video how we check these out. But what you want to make sure of, I'm going to point this out to you. What you want to make sure of, and this is just from my knowledge or the shop's knowledge or whoever's working on this phone at the shop, what we would do is we would make sure, and even though this is the receiver capsule, we would make sure the two connections there ran all the way down to the modular handset port and then down the cord. Okay, and then to the phone, and we would check continuity on that, and then we would come down here, and this is a new line cord that this customer has purchased and put on the phone, so it's brand new. So anyway, or it looks new, and I think he mentions that it's new. We also want to come from the microphone, okay, and we want to make sure that the connections at the microphone go to the port and go out of the port and then go back over here to the telephone. I'm going to swing this telephone over so we can have a look at it. And basically what we're looking at here is we want to make sure that these four connections here, you're going to have two grounds, one for the receive, one for the transmit, and then you're going to have two connections here. And I know the video is not the greatest, so you may not even be able to see it. But there's four connections here, and we want to make sure that they're soldered good, and that there's no cold solder or it's not working itself free. Once you do all that, you want to do some of the initial checks in the solder area and component area of where the handset comes in. And if you don't have a schematic, which you won't have a schematic to phones, most of these phones don't have any schematic. It's kind of a learned type skill. You have to know what you're doing, basically, but this is a good way to learn if you don't know what you're doing. Trace down these traces and see where they go, and start checking the components like the resistors and the capacitors and the transistors. And I've checked this phone out a little bit before we made the video, and I know for a fact that this telephone, when you first plug in the line cord, let's say, the modular line cord you plug in up here, well, the telephone takes a second to come on because this telephone generates its own power. There is some batteries in this telephone, but and here's the inside case. There is some batteries. There's a battery pack right there for this telephone, but it's just for memory. So basically, when you plug a line cord into this telephone here, at the port for the line cord, basically what happens is it takes a second for this telephone to activate, because it's making its own power. So in other words, when the line cord comes in, it takes a second to build up the power and then distribute it out to the telephone. Well, it'll come on within a second or two of plugging it into the line cord, but the transmit never really kicks in for a little while. So there is something wrong with it. This phone definitely has a problem. And it is not an intermittent or a problem with one of the lines not being connected or a solder trace or joint. We've been through all that, so we know that that's not the problem. This is going to be a component level problem. It's probably going to be the microprocessor, and basically, or a transistor, or a resistor or capacitor. So we have to get into this telephone now, and we have to do it at board level, and we're going to have to start checking these components. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the camera down for a second, and I'm going to unplug this handset cord, and I'm going to move it over, and I'm going to take the telephone and I'm going to unplug it. This board plugs in. This board plugs in to this board. Okay? So basically what we're looking at here is I want to flip it over, and we're going to be in this section right here. Okay? And here's the modular port for the handset. It's right here. So what we want to do is we want to start following these traces out. We want to start following them out from the handset cord and finding the capacitors, the resistors, the diodes, and the transistors on the board here. And there's even a variable here, and then there's a variable over here, and there's a variable here that looks like it's for the microphone, for the speakerphone. And we want to check all these capacitors and all these parts and all these transistors here. So we want to check all that and try to figure out what is causing this telephone to not have any transmit for the first 10 to 20 seconds. And sometimes, I've checked this phone out, sometimes it goes for minutes. And one time it went for a long time before we ever had any transmit. So there's a component that is weak, and it's not supplying the proper connection that we need to the circuit to fulfill our transmit. And so and sometimes this can be what's called a tough dog, because the component is actually working and will work, but yet it's failing. So it's going to be very hard to take a meter, to take your test meter here, your volt ohm meter, and your your test equipment, and check these parts, because the part is actually good. It's only bad for the first part until it starts engaging and then starts working. So it's going to be a tough dog to find this part, and you got to keep searching, and you got to keep checking until you find it. So that's a little bit of the initial check out of this telephone. We're going to make another video, and after I get off this video, I'm going to go ahead and go into this telephone and do some board level component checking. And that's how you repair a telephone or any other piece of electronics. You have to get in there sometimes and just start testing everything. So I hope you enjoyed the video. This is Dennis with A1 Telephone Service and Repair, A1 Electronics, and this is a Radio Shack telephone that in the initial checkout. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Goodbye.